All right, we're alive again. I should say we're. Landra is not with us. She is doing her thing, flying across country, flying. But maybe she'll pop in or maybe she'll call. We will see. Um, so just gonna do a little dive into Somalia. Just kind of see the culture, what's going on there, history. Um, just kind of gonna do a little bit of that maybe. There we go. So just gonna sit here and talk a little bit history, culture, geograph. Uh, then we're just gonna jump into current events, all in this right here, and this live. So once again, this is maybe I'm Andrew. Alondra's not with us today, but I'll do my best. I'll do my best. So we're just gonna start off with a little bit of Google search, a little bit of Gemini. Um, Obviously, look around. Obviously, anything in Google Maps probably isn't gonna make it look. I don't know what it will make it look like. I guess I never really looked into it. So we will see together how it all works out. If anybody knows anything, let me know. Drop it in the comments. We'll talk about it. Trying to get that working. All right.
That's a fantastic choice, as the four-pillar structure, history, culture, geography, current events, gives you the best foundation for a high-retention stream. It's concise and covers all the facts you requested. Here are the key, short facts for each of the four pillars, perfect for a dynamic and fact-driven live stream. Somalia, the four pillars, key facts. 1. Geography and global impact, fact category. Key points, location, occupies the easternmost tip of the Horn of Africa. Coastline, has a strategic location and the longest coastline in mainland Africa, over 3,333 km. Closing parenthesis dot. Borders, shares land borders with Djibouti, Ethiopia, and Kenya, capital. Mogadishu is also the largest city. Resources, largely unexploited reserves of oil/natural gas, iron ore, and uranium. 2. History, fact category. Key points, ancient, known to the ancient Egyptians as the land of Punt, famed for frankincense and myrrh. Medieval, flourished as powerful coastal sultanates, e.g. Mogadishu, Adal from the 10th century. Colonial, divided into British Somaliland, north, and Italian Somaliland, south. Independence, gained independence in 1960 when the two territories united. Modern conflict, civil war erupted in 1991 after the collapse of the Siad Barre military regime. 3. Culture and identity, fact category. Key points, identity, Somalis are one of Africa's most ethnically and linguistically homogeneous populations. Poetry/arts, often called the nation of poets due to its rich oral tradition. Religion, overwhelmingly Sunni Muslim. Social, society is traditionally organized around the extended family and clan designations. Nomadism, a large portion of the non-urban population follows a traditional nomadic pastoralist lifestyle, with camels being vital to their economy and culture. 4. Current events and resilience, fact category. Key points, economy, relies heavily on livestock exports, agriculture, and substantial remittances from the global diaspora. Climate, one of the most climate-vulnerable countries globally, facing recurrent and severe droughts and floods. Global impact, its location is strategically important for global shipping lanes, e.g. near the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Resilience, despite decades of conflict and climate shocks, The economy is showing signs of recovery and building long-term resilience with international support. These facts are structured for quick delivery, which aligns with your preference for shorter answers and
Oh, thank you for keeping it short. Yeah, so I haven't done too much research.
That's
Oh, hi,
exciting.
babe.
Going live is a great way to connect with your audience. To ensure your stream...
Um, Let me quit sharing. And there we go. I miss you already. Hi. Come back home. All right. So, yeah, we're just getting into it a little bit. I know you don't have probably much time or whatever, but Alondra. Let's see. What do I want to ask? I wanted to know more about was it the tribes? I don't think it was tribes. What do we call them? Sorry, don't mean to offend anybody. I'm just learning. So, um, yeah, so we dug into that. So let's jump into the culture a little bit and the tribes or whatever.
That's a key part of the Somali identity. Let's break down the culture, focusing on the social structure and core traits. Culture and clan structure. 1. The clan system, not tribes. The social structure of Somalis is based on patrilineal descent, tracing lineage through the father, which is organized into large clan families. Key fact, the term clan is more accurate than tribe. The clan system is central to identity, providing kinship, mutual support, protection, and political affiliation. The 5 major clan families, Somalis, are largely divided among 5 main patrilineal clan families: Darod, Hawiye, Rahanwein, Deer, and Isaac. Abtirsi. Individuals can typically trace their ancestry, or Abtirsi, back many generations to a common founding ancestor. Patriarchy. Traditional society is patriarchal, where male elders and a council of chiefs often manage disputes using zir, Somali customary law. 2. The nation of poets. Somalis share a remarkably homogeneous language and religion, but the culture is most famous for its oral tradition. Key fact, Somalia is often called the nation of poets, or the land of the camel and the poets. Role of poetry. Poetry is central to political debate, historical record, social commentary, and conflict resolution. It's often used instead of written prose. 3. Core cultural traits. Religion. The vast majority of Somalis are Sunni Muslim. Islam is integral to their culture, law, and daily life. Nomadism. A significant part of the population is traditionally nomadic pastoralist, revolving around the care of camels, cattle, and goats. The camel is a powerful cultural symbol of wealth and status. Hospitality. Hospitality is a deeply valued trait, particularly toward guests and travelers.
If Somalia is so old, why does it seem so poor and war-torn? Let's get into that a little. Let's back it up into that.
That's an excellent and crucial question. The contrast between Somalia's ancient, prosperous history and its recent instability is primarily due to the collapse of the central government and the ensuing civil war, which started in 1991. The poverty and conflict aren't a reflection of its ancient past, but rather a direct result of decades of complex modern failures. Causes of modern instability. The primary reasons Somalia is considered poor and war-torn stem from 3 interconnected modern factors. 1. The Siad Barre dictatorship, 1969 to 1991. Clan manipulation. Siad Barre's military regime initially promoted unity, but later relied on brutal authoritarianism and the manipulation of clan differences to maintain power. Economic collapse. Reckless economic policies, mismanagement, and waning Soviet-US support during the late Cold War led to a sharp economic decline in the 1980s. Brutal repression. The regime engaged in massive human rights abuses against opposition groups, particularly in the north, creating deep, violent resentments. 2. The 1991 state collapse. Power vacuum. When armed opposition groups overthrew Barre in 1991, they failed to agree on a successor. This left a massive power vacuum. There was no effective central government for over 2 decades. Civil War. The competition for power and resources led to a destructive civil war among various clan-based factions and warlords, shattering the nation's infrastructure and productive sectors. 3. Protracted conflict and climate shocks. Al-Shabaab. The subsequent rise of militant groups like Al-Shabaab has perpetuated the conflict, destabilizing regions and making state-building efforts incredibly challenging. Displacement and poverty. The ongoing conflict has created mass displacement, millions are internally displaced, and destroyed what little physical and social infrastructure remained. Climate change. Somalia is highly vulnerable to recurrent severe droughts and floods. These climate shocks constantly erode livelihoods, especially livestock and farming, and exacerbate food insecurity, pushing millions into acute poverty. In short, Somalia's decline is a post-1960s phenomenon, rooted in failed governance, civil war, and the ongoing struggle against extremism and climate disaster, not its ancient history.
Okay. Okay. Well, shit the bed. What else do we want to dig into? So, can you tell us about the history from before 1960s?
That's an important period. Somalia's pre-1960 history is defined by its deep ancient roots, powerful medieval trade, and the eventual division by European colonialism. History before 1960, the two eras. 1. Ancient and medieval dominance, pre-19th century. Land of Punt. Somalia is widely believed to be the ancient land of Punt, referenced in Egyptian records dating back to the 2nd millennium BC, a source of frankincense, myrrh, and aromatics. Medieval sultanates. From the 7th century onward, Muslim Arabs and Persians established lucrative trading posts along the coasts. Powerful states like the Sultanate of Mogadishu, 10th-16th centuries, and the Ajuran Sultanate, 13th-17th centuries, controlled the regional trade and left an extensive architectural legacy. These polities were key players in the Indian Ocean trade network. Nation of poets. The oral tradition and use of poetry as a form of social, political, and historical documentation flourished during this time, earning Somalis the nickname the Nation of Poets. 2. The colonial division, 19th century, 1960. The arrival of European imperial powers in the late 19th century divided the Somali territory. British Somaliland. Britain claimed the northern part as a protectorate, primarily to secure a stable supply route, meat/provisions, for its key port in Aden, Yemen, across the Gulf of Aden. The British took a more hands-off approach to governance. Italian Somaliland. Italy acquired the Southern Territory, which became a colony and later part of Italian East Africa. The Italians focused more on infrastructure development and colonial settlement. Dervish resistance. The Islamic nationalist leader Muhammad Abdullah Hassan, the Mad Mullah, led the Dervish state, which fought a persistent religious-based war of resistance against the British and Ethiopians from 1899 to 1920, successfully repelling the British multiple times before being defeated by air power. Path to Union. Following World War II, the British administered both territories. The former Italian Somaliland was transferred to the UN as a trusteeship under Italian administration in 1950, with a promise of independence in 1960. Independence. The two distinct territories, British Somaliland and the Italian Trust Territory, united in 1960 to form the independent Somali Republic. This video provides an overview of modern Somali history, including the democratic decade after 1960 and the subsequent military dictatorship, Somalia, the Forgotten Story. YouTube video views will be stored in your YouTube history, and your data will be...
Okay. So that might be an educational thing to go watch too. If you tuned into this, maybe check out that, The Forgotten Story. So why is it so war-torn now? And there's refugees everywhere? Or is that all due to
That's a very important question. And the answer is that the current instability is driven by a dangerous cycle of three key modern factors that reinforce one another. The core reasons are not a single conflict, but rather a combination of ongoing political, security, and environmental crises.
Okay.
1. Protracted conflict and extremism, the primary driver. State collapse. The breakdown of the central government in 1991 created a security vacuum that has never been fully filled by a stable state. Al-Shabaab. The Islamist armed group Al-Shabaab remains a major threat, conducting deadly attacks and controlling territory. This perpetual conflict forces both internal displacement and creates refugees fleeing to other countries. Interclan disputes. While the government is fighting Al-Shabaab, local conflicts, often over land and scarce resources, continue to displace people, especially when combined with environmental stress. 2. Climate shocks, the displacement catalyst. Extreme weather. Somalia is highly vulnerable to climate change. The country has been hit by severe and recurrent events, including historic droughts. Years of failed rains, like the severe drought from 2021 to 2023, devastate the economy, killing millions of livestock and destroying farming livelihoods. Catastrophic floods. These follow the droughts, washing away infrastructure and homes. Forced migration. Climate shocks often destroy the livelihoods of nomadic and rural communities, forcing millions to flee to urban centers for food and aid, creating massive numbers of internally displaced persons, IDPs. 3. Weak governance and lack of infrastructure. Corruption. The country struggles with high corruption, which diverts resources away from development and security efforts. Stretched resources. Decades of conflict and the continuous influx of IDPs overwhelm urban areas, which lack the infrastructure, like water, healthcare, and housing, to support the displaced population. In short, refugees and IDPs are fleeing because the violence from conflict and the existential threat of climate shocks often strike at the same time, leaving people with no other choice but to seek safety and assistance elsewhere.
Okay, well, like, what exactly is a climate shock? Like, a prolonged period of time? Like, I don't quite get.
A climate shock is an abrupt, high-magnitude deviation from normal weather patterns that causes severe damage and disruption to society and the economy. It is not just bad weather, but an extreme event made more frequent or intense by climate change, and Somalia is particularly vulnerable to them. Key examples of climate shocks in Somalia. For Somalia, the most devastating climate shocks manifest in a destructive cycle of two extremes: droughts and floods. 1. Prolonged droughts, the most devastating shock. A drought becomes a climate shock when it is unprecedented in its length and severity.
So, Minnesota doesn't have that? We got winter. I feel like it'd be
That is a
nicer
great
there.
point for comparison, especially since Minnesota is home to the largest Somali community in the U.S. The short answer is, Minnesota experiences climate extremes, but its strong infrastructure, economy, and stable government prevent those events from becoming national humanitarian crises like those in Somalia. Here's a concise breakdown of the difference. Feature: Minnesota, strong resilience. Somalia, high vulnerability. Climate shocks. Yes, experiences severe flooding, e.g. Mississippi River, and droughts, e.g. 2021. Yes, experiences catastrophic multi-year droughts and severe flooding. National impact. Impacts are primarily economic, billions in damage, and local, with temporary displacement. Impacts are humanitarian, mass starvation, disease, and national, causing mass internal and external displacement. Livelihoods, diversified economy, technology, agriculture, finance. Climate shocks cause crop damage, but do not wipe out the entire food source of the population, heavily reliant on rain-fed agriculture and livestock. Climate shocks often kill all livestock, the primary wealth source, for millions of people. Governance, stable, centralized government with sophisticated disaster response agencies, e.g., FEMA, National Guard. Weak, developing central government with limited resources and capability to respond to disasters, especially in areas controlled by Al-Shabaab. Infrastructure, robust infrastructure, dams, dikes, roads, public health systems, can largely contain and mitigate the effects of floods/droughts. Limited or destroyed infrastructure, no major dams, poor roads, strained health systems, turns a climate event into a humanitarian catastrophe. In short, Minnesota has the resources, governance, and infrastructure to absorb the shock of extreme weather, whereas Somalia's fragility turns those same environmental events into existential threats.
So, what's the positive impact all the Somalis have had on Minnesota?
That is a very relevant and positive shift in focus. The Somali community, which is the largest in the US, has had a significant and growing impact on Minnesota's economy, workforce, and cultural life since the first large wave of refugees arrived in the early 1990s. Here are the key positive impacts, structured for a factual and straight to the point explanation. Positive Somali impact on Minnesota. 1. Economic and workforce contributions. Filling labor gaps. Somali Minnesotans have high labor force participation rates and play an essential role in key state industries, particularly in areas like healthcare, manufacturing, especially food processing plants outside the Twin Cities, and transportation. Entrepreneurship. Somali immigrants are active entrepreneurs, launching businesses that serve both their community and the broader public. Major hubs of Somali commerce, often dubbed Little Mogadishu, have revitalized commercial corridors in Minneapolis, like on Lake Street, and other cities like Wilmar. These businesses include restaurants, grocery stores, import/export operations, and financial services, like money transfer, taxes, and spending power. As the community gains economic footing, households contribute hundreds of millions of dollars annually in federal, state, and local taxes, and add significantly to the state's consumer spending power. 2. Political and civic engagement, political representation. The most high-profile example is the election of Somali Americans to local, state, and national offices, notably the election of Ilhan Omar as the first Somali American elected to the U.S. Congress. This increases civic participation and ensures diverse voices are heard in policymaking. Nonprofit sector. They have established numerous community-based nonprofits, such as the Confederation of Somali Community in Minnesota, that provide essential services like job training, housing assistance, and youth mentorship, strengthening the social safety net for all Minnesotans. 3. Cultural enrichment, cultural preservation. The community has established key cultural institutions like the Somali Museum of Minnesota in Minneapolis. This is North America's only Somali-focused museum, and it actively preserves and shares the rich Somali oral traditions, art, and artifacts, like the traditional nomadic hut, or AQAL. Arts and cuisine. Somali culture has enriched the state's art scene with music, poetry, and traditional dance, and has added a distinct and popular East African flavor to the local culinary landscape. The Somali community is also notably younger than the overall Minnesota population, meaning they represent a growing and essential part of the state's future workforce and demographic stability.
Well, oh, well, hello. Glad to see you're back. Are you still back? Okay. Figured out how to do that, babe. Okay. Anyway, just trying to learn a little bit about Somalia and everything, really, since that's a big thing in the news and a big thing going on. And Donald Trump just took away whatever rights, or tried to, or I don't know. So we just went over all the positive. What are the main negative impacts then?
That's an essential part of the discussion. While the community has strong positive contributions, any large recent wave of immigration and resettlement also presents complex challenges and negative impacts that Minnesota has had to address. The main negative impacts tend to fall into 3 categories. Negative impacts and challenges in Minnesota. 1. Socioeconomic and integration challenges. Poverty and unemployment. Many Somali refugees arrive having experienced trauma and lacking English proficiency, resulting in high rates of poverty and unemployment compared to the general Minnesota population.
Okay.
This increases the demand for state and county public assistance programs and social services. Educational attainment. There are significant educational achievement gaps. with lower rates of high school graduation and higher education attainment among some Somali adults compared to the state average. This affects long-term economic integration. Health disparities. The community faces specific public health challenges, including lower rates of screening for certain cancers and higher rates of conditions like diabetes, as well as lower initial rates of childhood vaccinations, e.g. MMR, due to cultural barriers and misinformation. 2. Cultural conflict and legal system strain. Clan justice versus U.S. law. The use of traditional Somali customary law, zir, by community elders to resolve conflicts, sometimes involving the payment of blood money, can directly conflict with the U.S. criminal justice system, occasionally hindering local law enforcement investigations. Acculturation stress. Adolescents and young adults often face high levels of acculturative stress as they try to balance traditional Somali culture, religion, and family expectations with American secular society, leading to internal conflict and, in some cases, contributing to gang-related issues. Perceived discrimination. Members of the community often report experiencing discrimination and prejudice, which can affect housing, employment, and overall mental health. 3. Fraud and security concerns. High-profile fraud cases. Minnesota has faced highly publicized cases of large-scale fraud involving state and federal programs. The most significant example is the Feeding Our Future scandal, where numerous individuals, many with ties to the Somali community, were charged with defrauding a federal child nutrition program of hundreds of millions of dollars. This fraud has led to significant financial losses for taxpayers and damaged the reputation of many legitimate Somali nonprofits. Security concerns and misinformation. Due to Somalia's instability, security concerns have been raised by some political figures regarding the potential for money to be laundered or funneled to extremist groups like Al-Shabaab overseas. These claims, often amplified by certain media, frequently lack clear evidence but fuel negative rhetoric and distrust. It's important to stress that while these negative issues exist, community leaders and law enforcement are actively working to address challenges, and the vast majority of Somali Minnesotans are law-abiding citizens who enrich the state. The complexities of Somali integration in Minnesota are explored in this video, which may give your viewers more context. Somali community rejects Trump's call to end temporary protected status. YouTube video views will be stored in your YouTube history, and your data will be stored and used by YouTube according to its terms of service.
All right. Well, that's good to know by my terms of service. So, obviously, Minnesota's beautiful. To each their own. I strongly live by. But that's the same goes for the Somalian population needs to live like that too. I don't got too much more. I'm surprised I didn't get a few more questions by anybody. So Somalia's poor, lots of death, lots people move to here, to this beautiful city here. Going down the streets. Going on that way, dude. But anyways, it's a little bit of Minneapolis. Until next time, guys. Maybe we'll learn a little bit about Muslims. Don't know much about them besides a bunch of people arguing all the fucking time. Turns out, like, we're all people to a certain extent, you know. I don't know. Lots of thoughts. But until next time. Peace. Have a good day. See you in the morning for the few who do watch the news.